morning, everyone. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much for joining us this morning as Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell continues his series of engagements, in-person engagements that is, with members of the media. This morning, in addition to the Prime Minister being present, of course, we have Tonya St. Louis Lawrence of WPG 10, Sherry Ann Noel of the Government Information Service, and Andy Donald of Real FM. Welcome to all of you. Prime Minister, welcome. And thank you for continuing this series of engagements with members of the media. I'm sure there is lots to discuss. A lot of developments are taking place in the country. We have vaccination, the health situation, the management of the COVID pandemic. We have the industrial relations climate. We have lots of projects both in the public and private sector. Prime Minister, bring us up to speed on what's been happening.
First of all, let me welcome my friends from the media. And of course, as you quite rightly said, we welcome this opportunity to engage with our media brothers and sisters on a regular basis. So I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you here. And of course, those who are online, and of course those who may be submitting questions and comments as we proceed with this important engagement. Yes, you are right, Philo, that there are a number of national issues that are before us at this particular time. Chief among them, of course, chief among any issue that's facing every country in the world today is the control and management of COVID-19, because that is about health, and of course, if you don't have health, everything falls down. So this is a case in point. I must say that in a general sense, we're getting a lot of credit for having managed the COVID-19 reasonably well so far. And of course, the necessity to stay the course is something that we must never shift from. As I speak to you here this morning, the report I have is that the total number of cases, COVID-19 cases, remain relatively low compared to the numbers seen across other countries in the region and across the international communities. Grenada has recorded 161 cases to date, that is over a year plus, with 2 active cases at this particular time. The COVID-19 vaccination program continues across the country. We have already pointed out that if we are to resume our work as normal with all the activities that each person in the country normally would want to be in, the necessity for vaccinating is extremely important. And of course, I have attempted to lead by example, as being one of the first persons in the country to do so, and of course taking my second dose of vaccination last week, Friday. So I urge everyone to do the best they can in terms of protecting themselves and their family. To date, the report I have that we have in excess of over 12,500 persons have received their first dose, and just over 2,300 have received both doses. I consider it relatively small comparative to what we really would want to see. There is, in my view, a significant supply of vaccines available, and the population therefore is encouraged to get vaccinated. I'm listening to President Biden last night on his State of the Union message, and he was pleading and admonishing his people to get vaccinated, and so far he has been reasonably successful since he came into the presidency in getting America back on track as far as the COVID situation is concerned. They want to make the point, the right of persons to choose not to be vaccinated and the right of employers to protect their businesses. Now, I want to make it clear. I heard it was said recently by some public relations person of a political organization, whose name I would not call, indicated that I have sent mixed messages out there. I don't know how it can be said that I'm sending mixed messages. If I have said, and have repeated over and over, the government will not go to Parliament to pass a law that will say you must vaccinate everybody in the country. This is a law. We said we will not do that. But we made it very clear that everyone should vaccinate to ensure that we can get back to where we want to be. But we also make it clear that it's the right of employers to insist that you must vaccinate. I don't see a conflict there. I don't know where the conflict comes in. It must be in the minds of the individual or persons of that nature. There cannot be a conflict. There are a number of issues that are not part of a law, which employers decide that you must do if you want to be in my work environment. A number of issues. I have insisted on my constituency workers in my own constituency. If you want me to come there to be part of the process of communication, then you must vaccinate. So that is a condition for the continuing to be part of my work environment in my constituency office. The same thing exists with an employer, whether it's a hotel or any other institution, or in fact the education system or persons of the same thing. If you are going to be there in contact with persons, and we want to make sure that you're not part of a process of infecting people, and you never know, any one of us can, then it means that we have to be responsible. So I hope that that position is made clear and repeated over and over. In that sense, therefore, I want to reiterate a call for all church leaders, business community, trade union leaders to demonstrate leadership by encouraging persons to get vaccinated. To me, the issue of vaccination is not a political issue. It is a health issue. It's a life issue. And it cannot be the government, the Prime Minister, or the Minister of Education, or the Minister of Health to talk about commitment to vaccinate or to protect ourselves. It cannot be left to us. Every single individual and every church leader, every community person, even if you are a shopkeeper and you're serious about your commitment to your society, when people come into your shop, you encourage them to protect themselves and to protect their families. So that's a responsibility of every single person in our society, and it should not be left to a political person or left up to a medical professional to continue the process of education of this in this important area. In my view, Grenada is well poised for recovery in many sense. Our development projects in both the private sector and public sector are ongoing, with many others to come on stream. Thousands of jobs have been created by the public sector projects at this particular time. There is considerable investor confidence because we have managed to create a favorable investment climate, and we must safeguard that as we seek to attract more and more investment. But fundamental to the maintaining of this process of successful investment and activities and job creation is the image that we are protecting ourselves and protecting our society. And that's the point for us to continue to move in that direction and further down the road positively so. Then that is absolutely crucial. Therefore, despite these positive signs, there are those who continue to be hard hit by the pandemic. Up to this morning, I was on a Zoom meeting with my constituents or constituents all over the country who come on Zoom because of the fact that I'm not going physically in my constituency office. And people are complaining about the problems that they're facing. And I've said over and over, I have never met more inquiries for personal help. People that never came to see me in my 30-odd years of parliamentary representative and 20-odd years as Prime Minister. I've never seen that level of persons coming and asking literally to save them personally, and so on. Limitation of government resources and my personal resources is obvious. So it is a painful experience for me, watching good people, solid people, people who never asked for help and always did what they could to maintain themselves and their family, and now in a position asking for help to continue taking care of their basic and fundamental needs. Now, I therefore want to reiterate, government continues to ask people to continue to do what they have to do in maintaining, ensuring that others are able to get support. So we have committed ourselves, as we said over and over, to the 4% increase to public officers when revenues earnings can facilitate this. In that sense, I want to commend the most of the public servants in several areas of government service, whether it's the police, the prison services, the public workers in general, and most teachers. I consider that they've been highly responsive in understanding the situation of government. So I want to commend them and to say that the government accept the fact that we have committed legally. We have said over and over, we cannot duck that responsibility, and we empathize with the workers who may have been planning, like I planned or others planned, to be able to continue to do the things based on expectation of resources. So we know what that means and what it meant to them. So we are very sensitive to this. But I do want to find out, because of the ongoing perception that government is not meeting its fundamental obligation, to say that we understand the needs of the persons involved. But we do want to say the government has met with the negotiating team of the GOT, which has been the main group outside, the leadership, I mean, who are articulating and advocating for immediate payments that the government is not able to do. That they met with them before, and that issue is before the Labor Commissioner, to present fiscal update regularly, which indicated that the government at this point is yet not in a position to meet the continuing demand. I think it's important to point out that some people are saying, even saying, because if we could find $1 million to give the St. Vincent, that means we could find the money for the teachers, and for all teachers or all public servants. I think it's unfortunate that anyone would use the help to our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent who are in desperate shape as any basis why we should get additional support at this particular time from government. Because when we were flat on the ground, they didn't ask us, they had their own troubles. The government then had increases that they wanted to give their public servants, but they gave Grenada. I remember St. Vincent and all the OECS countries that the monies we normally have to pay for the upkeep of the OECS Secretariat, in some cases Grenada's contribution is literally almost $2 million a year. They took up the slack. All of them joined together and took to pay for Grenada's share. So they made direct financial contribution. And I'm assuming St. Vincent is state that we may be called upon, not yet officially through the OECS, to handle similarly until St. Vincent recovers, which was really what happened in our case. The joint negotiating team of government of the representing TAU and the public workers has met with the Labor Commissioner also to discuss the 4% issue. Government's negotiating team will have similar meetings with the Labor Commissioner next week, following which the two parties will be brought together again. In other words, there's ongoing consultation and commitment working with the unions in dealing with the problems as they indicated. I want, therefore, to endorse the concern by the Ministry of Education, in particular the minister, about some teachers who have, of course, decided to leave the students unattended by calling in sick. What is significant about this, and I believe every person in the country ought to be concerned, is that instructions, as I understood it, went out to teachers by the leadership of the union, indicating on Monday, on weekend, that they would have a sick out on Wednesday. They must have a sick out. Now, if you're sicking out because you're sick, that's one thing. But if you're sicking out based on some demand of some group, then clearly that cannot be considered, in my view, a sick out. But what is significant is the sick out was also in indicating the necessity for it, or the decision to do so. They were told not to tell the students. In other words, let them come to school and then tell them they have to go home midday. Now, you and I know that has consequences. I don't believe any serious person, any concerned person for our children's welfare would want to indicate that you should put a situation where the parents expect a child to be in class, in school. The parents may have gone to work. That child may be left unattended and no preparation for the welfare of this child. That this child then will tell to go home at 10 o'clock in the day. You know the society we're in. There are pedophiles outside there. We know them. We know they have them outside there. There are people, young children, whose minds are not as developed as others, may find themselves in compromising position with the opposite sex or similar sex, whatever they are. That's a problem. When no parents' guidance are out there, no support system, anything can happen. And you also have the possibility, younger ones being able to walk the streets because without a planned program of how to get back. I had one parent call me, very concerned, and that was a grandfather, that he took his child to school, his grandchild to school, and normally he goes to pick up that child. And when he went, he saw no child, so he went home, and his child was sitting in the veranda because she could not get into the house. So that child walked from where she was in the school to home, and was a young child. That is frightening for a parent, and he was very concerned. And that's not a parent who normally get involved in any issue at all, politically or otherwise. So I'm just saying that I'm calling on our leadership of the trade union, teachers movement, to have a sense of fairness, concern. We don't have a problem with your wish and what you want. This is your right. And we believe most teachers are very concerned and are doing their jobs as we expect them to. We would not have been doing that well on regional and other examinations. We would not have been making the kind of society we are developing and activities that are taking place without guidance and direction and leadership from teachers, from the teachers community, teaching community in general. But we should therefore not allow leadership to lead us in doing something that are not responsible. I call and as I have to, and I hope and pray. This call must not come from me alone. It must come from every parent. It must come from every leadership in every organization. And that's why I repeated the churches. Many of the schools are in fact have a serious partnership in guidance and running by church leadership. I ask, where are the voices of the churches in that respect? We're not talking about 4%. We're not asking anyone to get involved in political issues. What we're talking about is the welfare of our children and the stability of our education system. And we call on persons we are ready to meet with interested parties who have concern, and I expect all should have, to meet with them to look at how we go forward. That's the position of the government today. I want to also point out that I am one, since I became Prime Minister, always felt strongly about the independence of the Royal Grenada Police Force. I want to say this. No one in my 20-odd years as Prime Minister, and I usually generally hold the office of National Security Minister, except for a short period. Now, no one, therefore, could say, no policeman, or no one the public can say, that I have been identified with instructing the police as it relates to breaches of the law, how they deal with citizens in breach of the law. No one. And I challenge anyone to say otherwise, or to indicate or provide proof otherwise. And I could point many examples. I remember at one time, a gentleman who was very close to me, security-wise, a police officer, was arrested in some domestic incidents and was in fact landed in jail for temporarily. The court freed him afterwards. The case went up. Now, if I was one who interfered with the police force, I don't see how that could have happened without my intervention, right? I want to be very clear. I remember also, and it's well known, not long ago, my chief security officer was very close to me, who occupied office next to me. Mr. Cletus St. Paul had an issue, and the police integrated, called him in, and in fact investigated, and he was subsequently charged. The Prime Minister interfered? I remember Minister Gary and some, what I would consider frivolous case, was called in by the police, and about a particular incident, I can't know what it was for, because it seems so strange in my view, but a minister was called in and charged. and did the Prime Minister get involved? The Minister of Government sitting in cabinet, you know. So, and I remember not long ago, in my own constituency, the altercation with a young gentleman that ended up getting shot, which was a great embarrassment to me. And in my heart of my constituency, people are known to be very sympathetic, and put me in a very difficult position as Minister of National Security and also a parliamentary representative. Did I interfere personally? No one could say that I did. I did what I had to do, identify, talk to the police about the situation. They provided their views, and of course went to the family and sympathized with the shooting of the gentleman, the fact that the gentleman was in pain and so on. That's where it stood. Prime Minister has never, this Prime Minister has never, I cannot say people have not attempted to get me involved. Some people have called me on certain occasions to ask me to intervene, and I said, well, that's the last person you will get to ever interfere. So I've never responded positively to anything like this. So I just wanted to be clear. I just make the final, before I allow you questions, to say, it pains me every morning and night I kneel to pray. I pray for the people of St. Vincent in these difficult times, knowing that when we had Ivan, we were able to plan automatically, because the wind came, storm came and went in about 10 hours or whatever the time it was. And when we look towards recovery, to have a volcano and you don't know when the eruption will stop, even now, while it hasn't happened for the last few days, even now, we can't say you can just go back and clean up and get ready to start to recoup their life again. It is a difficult thing. So I understand the situation. The government is making its contribution to the people of St. Vincent, and we are prepared, as we said, as a nation to take in evacuees. So far we have not had any, evacuees that would come in to reside here temporarily, but there are plans to take in some. We await the people of St. Vincent, the government of St. Vincent, with the protocol that we established in continuing to do so. So that is, friends, my opening salvo for this morning, and of course, clearly, it's your responsibility now to ask the questions or make comments as you see fit. So, over to you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for
Ladies
that opening statement.
Andrew, ladies first.
Andrew Donald is outnumbered here by the ladies this morning. So we've been doing this on a rotating basis with various journalists from the various media houses coming into the different sessions that we've been having. And just a reminder, we have Tanya St. Louis Lawrence, WPG 10, Sherry Anwell from GIS, Andre Donald from Real FM. Johnson Richards from the Grenada Informer should have been here this morning, but he had to, at the very last minute, cancel. But we'll, of course, have him in mind for a future event. So, Tanya, the first couple of questions go to you. Are you ready?
Okay, good morning to everybody. Mr. Prime Minister, I'll start with the most recent happening. As the Minister of National Security, I know you said that you don't get involved in this matter and so on. But what do you make of the police interrogation of the duty president on Saturday? And also, were you formally briefed about this development before or after it happened?
Yeah, I was told after. I wasn't briefed before. I made it very clear. I think the police knows me, you know. You don't approach me to ask me about how do you deal with a breach of the law. That's for the police. I can tell you this. I remember some time ago, maybe about 12 years, I was Prime Minister. A senior member of the police force, I wouldn't call name, called me to tell me that a certain person that he knew was a friend of mine's, they had information that he is involved in drug activity and that there were shipmen coming for that they suspected, they weren't sure. He wanted to inform me. So let me tell you, I didn't play deal with him. I said, what are you calling me for? What you calling me for? I say, when you tell me that now, and suppose the so-called shipment did not materialize, then you blame me for telling my friends. And then next thing you hear that the Prime Minister is involved. I say, don't ever do that again. In other words, if a law is broken, your responsibility. If my brother does it, he's dealt with according to the law. My son, deal with him. I will defend my son if something happens. I'll do what a father has to do. But don't tell me before. I make it very clear. You asked me about the gentleman. Let me say this. As far as I'm concerned, no one is above the law of the land. No one. Not the Prime Minister, not the Governor General, not a union leader. No. The NNP had a general council recently. Outdoor meeting, a general council, indoor meeting, sorry. We sought permission from the police. Now, Minister of National Security, people will say, well, why the Prime Minister asking? He's the boss. I'm not the boss of that. The police, the law says the police must authorize permission. So if there have to be some demonstration, which is the right of individual within the protocols established, no problem. As far as I'm concerned, if you refuse to do it, even after advice given, the police is in their right to call you in, as they have done to others. The former president and executive members of the teachers union were called in before about not seeking permission, written permission from the police. And you never heard a word. is this president has now been called in, and it becomes a big issue. For same breach, I want to say this. If I was in this police, response for the police, I would not call in the gentleman on a breach of protocol, because there are a number of people who are breaching protocol that we have not called them out. But I certainly would have called them out for breach of not seeking permission consistently when he was advised to make sure he does it. That is what I would have called him on. So you ask for my advice. If I was chief of police, this is what I would have done. I hope I made it very clear, my position.
And also, a couple of local economists have suggested that government use the 13 million that we would have to find to pay public servants as a virtual, like a stimulus package. Since that money would go back into the hands of the workers, it will help in the local spending immediately. That is about the investment in economic recovery, even if the government has to go into a deficit in the short term. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, you have to have the money to do it. Your assumption was that we have the money. We don't have it. That's the point. That is exactly the point we're making. No, Tonya, if a government is earning a certain level of revenue in 2019, right, as everyone knows, and we are boasting about fiscal successes and how we are managing it. In fact, based on that, we are getting serious resources for capital projects, not for paying salaries. If you pay salaries, you won't get a cent. We earn quite a lot that many countries in the Caribbean are not getting. So we can do a number of the projects I just mentioned. Now, if you're earning this money and a pandemic comes, we never prepared for a pandemic. The pandemic comes and you're earning 50% or a little more than that of the revenue that you used to earn in 2019. How can then we be expected to meet the same level of commitments that we had made in 2019? So we had to focus. Remember, we have commitments for everybody in this country, not just to one set of people, not to the ministers of government or anybody else, to everybody in this country. So my point is, if we had the resources, it makes sense, and it is better we pay now if we had it, because by postponing the payment, we are compounding our problem. Because since we must pay, then it means that we have to find back monies which we are trying to avoid based on the project, the conditions we signed with the international community of avoiding back payments and so on. So it makes sense for us. So it's illogical for anybody to expect that government will deliberately not pay something which will be in their best interest to make sure they do now as opposed to down the road. So yes, if we had the resources, what you're saying is logically sound, which is giving the workers money, if you have it, makes sense. They'll spend it, and it would help economic activity. The government will benefit, of course. The question, fundamental, as I said, the premise of your question is that we had the money. And we're simply saying, and the documents are there. Public workers are the ones before, Tonya, before the fiscal situation and numbers are known by me or the Minister of Finance. The public workers know it. So this is not something news I'm bringing. If I'm lying, then I have to be lying after the line of the public servants and the data they submitted to me, or the Minister of Finance. So I just want it to be clear that we are saying repeatedly again that we have no problem with the unions, whether it's teachers, public workers, police officers, or everybody, who have basically want the money we promised. We are saying, give us a little time. Things are happening right. If we vaccinate and the country get back, I could see us moving speedily to pay. So I don't have a problem with the demands being made. I just have a problem with the demand to pay right now. That is the difficulty I have. And as I mentioned earlier on, the members are calling me from other places. A gentleman came today on Zoom this morning and told me he works at the airport. And they have now done some rotation. So he's earning far less than he used to earn before. So his commitment to his children, he is not able to meet. So he's seeking some personal help and other help, and it's their right to do so. So I have to say to him, well, you know, what they're giving you is coming from the coppers of the government now, because we now have to find $1 million to support the same workers at the airport. $1 million a month. Hopefully, with the airport reopening, that situation will end not long from now. So hopefully, if the airport opens up and planes start flying again, they will be collecting a lot of airport taxes, and therefore they have been running well before the pandemic and meeting their responsibilities. So I expect that they would be able to take on their responsibility and not have to ask government to continue to supporting them. That's a position. I hope having spent some time in this, I just wanted to explain and to give our position as clearly as people would expect.
Tony, do you have another related question? Yes. Okay, so one more, and then we go to Andre Donald.
Also, Mr. Prime Minister, there have also been calls for government to use the money in the Transformation Fund to pay that 4% increase. Why has your government not disclosed to the nation the sum of money in that fund?
You just said it. You said transformation. How does paying money from the Transformation Fund transform what you're transforming? I just asked that question for what it's worth, but that's not the issue. The issue is fundamentally this. The commitment we have signed with the international community, just like the monies we get, grant support that we get from the IMF and others, and other institutions of support, is premised on the basis that the Transformation Fund is to be used for transformational activities, the productive sectors, spending more on agriculture, spending more on developing tourism, spending more on manufacturing, spending on fishing, the productive sectors, and building capital stocks in the country. That's the only place you can spend. In addition, we signed on, as you know, the Structural Adjustment Program. When it came into being, we owe hundreds of millions of dollars outside to debtors. The country owes to successive governments, including NNP, and long before NNP, and of course NDC governments who borrowed money, including paying the NIS and so on, their contributions. We had to sign part of the NTF monies, I can't remember the percentage, has to go towards meeting large payments. In fact, in November, we had to find over, I think, 12 or 13 million US dollars to meet the international. Otherwise, Grenada would be considered defaulting on a debt obligation. You know what that means? When you're bad pay, you lose all credibility. So the question of use of NTF funds is not there. It's not there. You cannot do it because you have the capital program to build the economy in the country. And they insist. And if we do that, we expect another 20 odd million US dollars from the IMF. If we touch that money and pay to public servants, proper smoke we pipe.
Just before we move on, I don't think I got the answer though. In terms of, if we were to put a figure as to the dollars and cents as to date, as to the monies that we have in that fund, would you be able to provide us with that figure?
Sure, the numbers and the figure in the NTF is for public consumption. It's not something hidden. In fact, we had to present it to Parliament on a regular basis. So we can get that for you. I don't have it in front of me now, but certainly I have no difficulty at all. Absolutely.
Andre Donald, you're up next.
Morning, Madam Press Secretary. Morning, Prime Minister. My first question, recently in your presence, a statement was made by a businessman which sort of sparked a little fire across the nation because of their interpretation of it. What say you in relation to that? This is the first time you're going to comment publicly, I think.
Are you implying?
Yes, I'm speaking about Mr. Suarez.
Yes, yeah. Yes. You know, I find this one very interesting, to tell you the honest truth. Let me make it. I think Sister Clarice Modas, the Minister of Civil Aviation, spoke eloquently and properly on this issue already. So I would say I endorse the comments she has made. And also to say that in no party meeting that I have held throughout my period of service in government, whether it's since 1985 to now, no parliamentary session, no cabinet meeting, there has been any discussion about privatizing the Grenada airport. We have never done it. Now, does that mean that a private sector person doesn't have a right to advocate it? Of course that is their right and their view. Many airports around the world are privatized. That's a fact. There's some airports in the Caribbean are privatized, not necessarily airports, for example, places that have more than one airport. They're privatized. So the issue of a private person expressing a view, to me, how can you, I cannot see me telling the gentleman you shouldn't say that, because he can't speak for the government. But it's the right of an individual to say the feelings on issues philosophically as they feel. I can't take that away. Are we going to say everyone that comes here and speak publicly that is speaking for the government? I'm amazed. I call it insultive. Honestly. It's very insultive. You know what it means? It means that the man control the government and control Keith Mitchell or the Minister of Finance. Nonsense. The people who advocate this are people who do not have a lot of respect for me or the government. I have to say so. I can't say otherwise, because I don't see how you can imply that a statement made by a private individual, and I see a comments made by a certain individual who ought to know better. He did not call the Minister of Finance. He did not call the Prime Minister, but he wrote. He wrote, implying that we make a decision. I call that malicious. It has to be malicious. Because if you are serious, you know, I tell you all something. I always remember the Alistair Hughes and the Leslie Pear and the Leslie Sions of the past. If they hear something, the government does something, the first person they call is the government. What am I hearing there? What foolishness you doing? You get that kind of comment from them personally. And they get the story and then they write. But there is an element here in this country that you say what you want first and let people respond after. To me, that's not responsible journalism. It's like a guy deciding, like we see in the United States and other places, a police investigating a thing, they shoot first, and you ask questions afterwards. Either situation, whether it's in the media or in the police and security, or otherwise, it's unfair.
Your government saw the need, and wisely so, sir, during the onset of the COVID pandemic. You rolled out a stimulus package, which probably was one of the first in the region. Can you tell us whether or not you have plans for another package which would bring some relief to the individuals who are really feeling it at this particular point in time?
We are in the deep negotiations and concluding soon with the IDB, the European Investment Development Bank, International Development Bank, IDB, and with CDB for 8.95 million US facility to use specifically to aid the recovery process and to help the marginalized sectors of the society or persons in the process of dealing with the pandemic that we are now facing. The Ministry of Finance is now been tasked with the responsibility with working with GDB and the Caribbean Development Bank and the international community to come up with that program to look at ways in which we're helping. And there are a lot of needs outside there. The taxi men, they're suffering. Because, I mean, these are guys you never saw before your door before. Because when the tourist season on, these guys are doing extremely well. And some will tell you, while the tourist season is for 5-6 months or so, they saved enough. And some of them have the little agriculture thing they do after during the dry season of the tourism sector. And therefore they never came to help for help. But there is no such tourism activity, cruise ship or hotel activities and so on. And even when the cruise ship are down, people are visiting the country, and a lot of taxi men provided service. A lot of busmen who had the transport solely working in the tourism sector were able to transport, to do other activities during the non-tourist season. But that situation is clogged up at this particular time. So we have to help them. And
So you wouldn't forget the media in this one? Okay, you wouldn't forget the media, right?
I have not heard that the media is in trouble at this particular time. I have not heard that. Maybe they have not, well, they have not told me that they're seeing a lot of trouble. Everyone is seeing some trouble to some extent, but maybe not to the extent that some people are doing.
No,
I don't know.
The media needs some help.
Well, maybe
sir.
you guys,
Don't forget us.
You guys need to inform me and advise me, educate me on this.
Mwag.
Okay, I hear you.
I have other questions.
Yes.
Can I go on? Sure. Okay, great. So what is the status of the merger with the cocoa and nutmeg sectors at this time? Are you able to give us the assurance that yes, you're still working on it, and yes, you will see it through?
Well, the Minister of Agriculture knows the philosophy and policy of the government, and he's been charged to lead that process. I don't know, I can tell you that where the status of discussion is at this particular time. We have not, in the recent weeks, asked for an update, but this is the policy of the government, and that will not be shifted. I'm clear, and I think the government cabinet is very clear, that the present situation of which these boards operate is unattainable. It makes no sense whatsoever to continue. And I find it strange that elements who are supposed to be chairman of boards and so on would want to continue in a situation where every time they have to be begging to be bailed out for basic resources and refusing to look at the structure and in the institution that they manage. If you manage in any business that is supposed to be providing support to its owners, like the farmers in this case, you would be examining what income or level of support that they're getting over the years. And if things are not doing well, you should have to look at another approach. And I'm convinced that merging these associations and taking different steps to liberalize the question of how they sell the products, I will not be able to be moved away from that fundamental philosophy. I said so in 1995 when I was elected to the Nutmeg Association. They shouted me down. I said so to the Cocoa Association. They shouted me down. My position has never changed. But I'm not a dictator. The farmers are the ones who control this association. They have a responsibility to also seek their best interests. And I'm convinced those who manage those boards, generally speaking, are not seeking the best interests of the farmers. I'm not afraid to say so.
Prime Minister, SGU is starting to turn wheels again. Can you speak to what impact that would have on the economy, especially the farmers?
Well, there's no doubt that the loss of thousands of students and the physical presence of the students at St. George University has impacted the lives of all sectors of the society. The fishing community suffers a lot. The farmers have suffered enormously, and the supermarkets are telling you the loss of income is quite staggering because of the loss of these thousands of students and all related ancillary activities of persons who associated with the university in a general sense. So it has caused a lot of pain and continue to do so. The fact that so many of the apartment buildings are today empty, and that the banks have been good enough to give them some time to recover because they know they're not earning any resources right now, is clearly another indication of areas of concern, because a lot of these apartment buildings, not only they provide services that people benefit from, but also they employ people. And because you have a lot of these apartment buildings down in that section of the country and other places, a lot of people have lost their job, temporarily at least, and therefore has been affected enormously. So I can't wait. Having been in discussion with the Chancellor of the University, and I must say Dr. Mordecai has shown himself more than just a Chancellor of a university in a country. He has shown himself to be a Grenadian also in his interest and commitment to the country. Anytime we call on him to ask for help in any area related to the country, he has been the first to come forward. So I feel his presence in terms of his interest in the country. He's now a member of the Grenada Tourism Board. He has agreed to serve. He has agreed to, as an ambassador at large, to provide help to the country in other areas. So I'm very convinced that having them back would provide tremendous lift to the economy of the country and the social life of the country.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Sherry Ann, we'll come to you next.
Good morning again, Mr. Prime Minister. I've got a couple questions for you, but before I proceed with them, I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned a lot about the industrial climate and what the government can and cannot do at this time. Based on the last presentation of the estimates of revenue and expenditure, we're just over the first quarter. Can you tell us exactly what does the fiscal space really allow now for the government to do?
Well, as I said, we're not earning the same level of income that we earned in 2019. So there's been adjustment with the estimated revenue. So estimated versus what existed before has to be compared. So if you ask me what the figure was in at the end of 2019 when we presented the budget, relative to what the projection was and what we're getting now, we're not doing too badly. That's, I think, is important. I was looking at the numbers for April, and they have 2 more days to go. It looks so far, but the estimated, remember, is adjusted from what it was in 2019. In other words, we estimated less. It looks so far, we're almost 90%, with 2 days to go at the customs. The inland revenue was about 78 or 75%. So that is a big change from what it was 6 months ago or 5 months ago. So things are, you're starting to see things are progressing well. And that's why we're saying to our friends, patience. We're going to make it. We're going to meet you. We're going to help. We're going to do what we have to do. You think I want to see a pastor teacher and to see his face rung up in front of me? I'm not happy to see that. I want them to be all smiling. So I hope we can do that not long from now. I'm looking forward to this. But let us all work together. Don't use our children negatively for that. If you have a problem with Keith Mitchell, deal with him, politically and otherwise. Don't use our children. They're not responsible for what the decision of the central government. I just ask them, just let's work together. Okay?
And can we have a status update now? I know during 2020, in the many press conferences and so, you stated that construction is what will drive the economy. Yes. We've seen the resumption of construction work, some of the government projects, and so in particular, that St. Patrick Road project.
Yes.
The first phase is progressing, but there was also mention of the second phase of that particular project. Can you give us an update on that status as to know that the first phase is progressing?
Right.
What will happen?
The Minister of Finance, who was the Minister of Works when the project was formulated, is working with the funding group, which is the Equity Fund, to ensure that the second phase would be or a minute the first phase is finished. And as you know, they're not quite where they should be in terms of finishing that project. So we expect that the second phase would be on, certainly before the end of the first phase.
And another major sod turning that took place is that of the MBIA for the expansion. Can you give us a status update on that one as well?
Yes, the first tranche of disbursement from the Bank of China was available. The work has begun, but of course, you know, in construction, a lot of technical stuff has to be done. I know the access road that leads to Sandals was part of the project through the airport area there. And they have bids going out right now to expect to be awarding a contract for this. Equipments are being, of course, ordered because a lot of this has to be new equipment. Of course, the expansion and improvement of the runway and creating a second section where planes can park also would facilitate further expansion of the traveling public to the country as a whole. So that project has begun. And we expect that it will yield tremendous benefits. And maybe in a sense, it probably is the right time to move that investment because hopefully within another year or two, when this project is completed and rolled off, then the tourism sector would have rebounded tremendously and provide a kind of avenue, an atmosphere for continued access of the visitors to the country and make their time in Grenada and from the time they enter to be much more better condition than it was at this particular time.
I have a couple others, but I'm just going to run these two by you before the rotation goes on. Your general feel on the cry of the people has to do a lot with our road network. Your general take on that, and my part two question, you would, if you can just shed some light to us on the whole issue of the Imani transition, because I know that the Ministry of Youth falls under your guidance.
Very important. You know, what's the first one again you said?
The Grenada's road network.
Let me make this point. We did an analysis of the issues in the country, facing the country at this time, in several constituencies. We did a recent survey, and it's scientifically done, sampling over 300 persons in each constituency. And we found out that number one concern was the COVID-19 and the ability to recover from that, because the impact of that on people's lives. But the second one was road. That one surprised me, because in other surveys we've done, generally speaking, you get things like other issues emerging, like jobs and so on, as being more factor. Jobs were there too, but way down. The road network, road problem was named as the second most important issue. So it's good that you've raised this, and the Ministry of Works has to be, of course, increase its activity in every way. But of course, again, road network, as you know, requires a lot of money, and that's the point. Should we ignore the road network through the capital program that we have and the resources given for that purpose, and spend it and in paying additional monies to the workforce, the established workforce in particular, and forget the quality of life of the people, which is reflected to some extent on the road situation in the country. So we are aware of that fundamental problem, and we are working to improve this. It is well known. I as a parliamentary representative, probably suffer than most, because the Northwest area has been impacted tremendously. The loss of that Millennium Road and the impact it has on the people in that particular section, the economic life has been enormous. The fact that now we have to inconvenience the people of Morris, and because you and I know some of the drivers in our country and not always been responsible in dealing with the things that they do when they ply the roads in this country. You see people throwing all kinds of stuff as they pass by from buses and trucks and so on the road, impacting the lives of the people of Morris and the community on that side. So I empathize with the people, and of course I myself have to pass in that narrow piece of road, and the Ministry of Work has tried their best to do that. But that road is under the feeder roads project. It's going to be a major construction. But I don't see how they can start that road until you have an alternative road to be done, and that is coming to Monkuma Road. In that road, as you lead up to Grenville Vale, if you head into New Hampshire, there's a bypass road that heads into, cut across, and you can end up straight into Bolio, almost in Bolio Junction, Snow Corner. That road is going to be constructed. The bids for that road will be available anytime now, and we expect, the information we have is that before the end of the year, that road should be completely constructed, and it will be a two-way road. Therefore, it would make from Busheju Bridge to that road to Bolio would be one of the better roads in the country, because as we know, from Busheju Bridge to that section of road I'm talking is one of the best roads in the country, because all concrete and it's very wide in terms of traffic, passage for traffic. So that is impacted. So we accept the fact that we have a serious issue with road situation in our country. And the Ministry of Works is trying its best with the limited resources that they have available at this time.
Prime Minister, I think she asked a two-part question. The second one was on the transition of
Yes.
the Imani training.
Yes, this is an issue ongoing. The Ministry of Youth has been working steadfastly, working in terms of transforming the youth, those Imani who, I don't call Imanis those who have passed the 2 years in the program. And I told them, stop calling them Imani. They are, in sense for the timing, contract workers, and we should pay them contract pay, and they're working on this until a proper transition into a permanent situation is established, because in many cases they provide an excellent service, and if they're doing so and we need them, we need to secure them. And that is the philosophy of the government. One of the main problems we had was satisfying even the management of the program. The workers who were working, they were also temporary. So we have now, I think, almost completed the reorganization of that particular unit. And of course, we have moved to some extent to deal with some of the workers already who have been put into a permanent situation, but there are a lot more others to be done. And we're working aggressively to ensure that we can do it all the workers who are serving the country well and at the same time not being appropriately compensated or taken care of.
PM, it might be useful to mention too the Pearls garment production factory that is going to be used as part of the transition strategy.
Well, that's for the garment. So they're going to be, we are creating a number of opportunities, because one of the things we see is a lot of people are buying all sorts of things, particularly school uniforms. And I don't see any reason why we can't have young people or talent in a garment situation. So we're establishing one facility in St. Andrews at Pearls Community Center, where a number of young people will be employed to produce a number of, in the garment area that can service the country in several areas. And you're going to be seeing more than that in other parts of the country. We have now established a furniture making operation in St. Patrick's. A number of young people, and they start making furniture already. We have spent a couple millions of dollars and buying the building and equipping it, and of course providing the necessary support services, training of people and so on in the process of developing. So we are doing a number of things. They are very excited in St. Patrick's. I just had a meeting there on Tuesday this week in Riverside, and they were excited about what was taking place in that part of the country as far as that particular operation is concerned.
Tonya, back to you.
Okay, so, Mr. Prime Minister, the unions have openly challenged your government claims that it cannot pay, but in the same breath, you were able to employ Ms. Alexandra Otway-Noel to a high-paying job. Millions are to be spent on traffic lights, the employment of the traffic wardens, and so on. The list goes on. My question here is, what exactly is the role of Ms. Alexandra Otway-Noel? She's the advisor of what? And how crucial are her services at a time when government is looking to cut back rather than expand?
Well, I like this one. The poor Prime Minister, you're not sorry for me. The Prime Minister is here. He's the only Prime Minister in the whole Caribbean. I think I would advise the media to do a research and the personnel of Prime Minister office throughout the entire Caribbean. And you'll see this is about less than a quarter of what is being hired for personnel. When I came in as Prime Minister, right, I had an advisor, right, advisor to the government, the new Prime Minister. I had several other technical people available to me. And that advisor was making over $7,000 a month, right? Now, he served me well. Over the years, the last several years, I've been without any advisor, no help. In fact, when I get serious projects as Minister of Finance, or if I don't have, I'm able to sit down and read that document, I sometimes overload Minister Bowen a lot with this because he's very thorough in researching documents and so on. So clearly, no Prime Minister should operate an office without any serious person that can aid. It's well known Alexander has the skills and, of course, the commitment and care to provide service. We have always had an excellent relationship. And therefore, and that's important if you're going to work closely with her. So far, she's been working a lot with the youth program. She's been working with the cruise ship industry to provide jobs to the young people of the country. She's been working with other sector, the tourism sector, knowing that her background, her parents' background was in the tourism. She's been doing a lot. She helps to review a lot of documents. I mean, she's well skilled, as you know, her background, her educational background has demonstrated this. And for 5,000 EC, it was really cheap. And she has not got, she said to you, she has not got paid. But, but let's suppose, how can one use a $5,000 EC payment to one person as a basis to pay 13.2 million US EC dollars a year to support somebody? And any event and contract, she can go at any time. One of the things we have to be concerned about, what the unions are asking us to do is to meet, not a monthly thing now, say pay 1 month and don't pay another month, They're saying pay every month. That's what they're saying. It's not a one-off, The money to St. Vincent is $1 million for people that has helped us when we were struggling. It's not saying 1 million every month, $1 million. Even the airport payment is not a continuous payment, It is because the airport is closed, although some people are advocating we should close the airport. Because the airport, a lot of the services now, the airlines are not coming as they used to. But we have to keep the airport open. So it'll be worse. In fact, this morning on the Zoom, a young man came to me about the loss of serious income of the fishermen. They had something like 275,000 tons, 275 tons of fish going out, and the Marriott came in once and he only took 90 tons, which means that the people lost more than 2/3 of the income, the fishermen. So the fish is all over the place. They have to give it away at $5 EC a pound and so on. It gives us more at the local level, more fish to eat, which is healthy, but at the same time, it's affecting the income of the fishermen. So that's the point we are making, is the fact that this is not a one-off. I think it's very unfortunate that anyone would use 5,000 EC dollars, and advisor to the Prime Minister who has nobody at that desk. If Mr. Cletus St. Paul is serving me as a security officer, he's no longer there. And your salary was more than $6,000. So I have much more savings today at the Prime Minister's office. I'm more limited with support than I was for the last 5 years. So I don't know I don't think it is wise for anybody to go there. I don't think they should go there. I like that word, don't go there. So I don't think that is a good thing. But you made another point about some other payments. Not only Alexandra, you said some other things.
And is there any truth to reports that there are plans in the pipeline to hire a national security advisor who is likely to ultimately become one of your party's candidates in the next general elections?
Well, if it's national security advisor, I don't see how he could be a candidate. I don't think, I think I know where you're going. But unfortunately, these are just speculation, and if it is what I think you're going for, there's no such truth to this. The gentleman involved that you may be talking about has never sought to be employed in any job at all. So that's totally odd. I think people just projecting because they probably know the gentleman probably is coming back home for good, and they know his background and security and so on. Certainly would seek his advice, but I don't know that he's seeking any payment for any services that he gives, and that has to be at a private level and so on. It's not going to be security advisor to the Prime Minister. That for sure I could tell you.
Also, outside of this, though, there are almost 40 vehicles on the port at the moment. And it was indicated that they would be destroyed because it's past the time to bring in the vehicles over the 10-year period and so. What can be done about this? Because these people are complaining that they took loan to get these vehicles and so on, and now they have to destroy it because they won't be able to clear it for use here.
Yes. I'm glad you're raising this, because one thing I could tell you, the vehicles won't be destroyed. But it's not fair to the government, not fair to the country. We all know what we're talking about, protecting our environment. We know most countries have already moved to deal with not importing. Some countries are using us as a dumping ground for old vehicles. That's well known. But we have announced this about 3 years now. Every time we have to keep postponing the date of implementation. And we tell people, this is a new deadline, but yet people still come in afterwards. The Ministry of Finance is working to clear those with those persons. But there must be a stop. There must be a stop, because people, when we go and do the new deadline or the new concession to allow them to clear it, next thing you find another set come in and then people come again. There must be an end to this. So we ask the media to please promote the fact that there would be some concession given for those that are there. I don't know, it's 40. I heard it was less than that, but you may be right. Whatever number it is, we'll give them the opportunity to clear, but there must be a stop to it.
One more from you, Tony, and then we go to Andre. Andre, the lady has yielded the floor to you, sir.
Mr. Prime Minister, I want to take it to St. Patrick's for just this question here. The Liver project, sir.
Yes.
What can you tell us at this particular point in time? Because we know it's a project that is really going to impact not just St. Patrick's, but St. Andrews and St. Mark's.
Yes. We are pleased that the project is proceeding. With a lot of resources are now being expended. You know, the temporary headquarters have been built. A number of people in St. Patrick's have been employed in that area. The EIA has been done to make sure that they operate within the established regional international order for environmental projects around the world. And that is also being done. It should be completed any time. Technical work is proceeding with respect to the golf course, the 18-hole golf course, and designs are being done with respect to the first building, which is the first major hotel activity. So they will see hundreds of jobs that are going to be created in that part of the country. And I must point out also that this good thing about that project, they are indicated they would require CBI application in going forward. But so far, they have hardly qualified yet for maybe if they had 20 CBI application, that might be a lot. So a lot of the money they're spending is investors who are involved in the project, spending millions of dollars so far. So that project is looking good, like the one in Mount Hartman and, of course, St. David's. But I do want to make this point. If they only recently, we were informed last week, a certain group of persons call themselves concerned citizens and environmentalists, formed a company, I can't remember the name, in January, and they now apply to the court for a judicial review to, in my view, to stop all the 3 projects. It's amazing. I mean, I could see an environmental group saying I have concern about one area And if the projects were in one area, but all three major projects that will bring thousands of jobs, a group that call itself so concerned citizens, wanting to, in my view, they would not tell you they want to stop it. They say they're so concerned about the environment and degradation of the mangrove and a lot of nice language. You remember some of them elements were the same people when the lagoon was a dump, right? All iron, all kinds of animals, dead animals will be thrown in there. These environmentalists, so-called environmentalists, they were in Grenada. Not a word. The local fishermen will go there with a little rod for game fishing, couldn't catch anything because of the pollution. Not a word. A gentleman came cleaning up the place, spent a few $1 million cleaning up. Demonstration by the environmentalists, even a certain speaker of the House of Representatives joined them to stop the project. Today, look at Lagoon. Fishermen going there, guys are catching little fish all over the place with their lines. You pass them and they get the fish. Place cleaned up. So that wasn't achieved. I'm glad to know that some of the so-called environmentalists, sometimes when I go to Port Louis, I see them sitting there having dinner. And I thought, oh, God is good, and all the time. And then I remember when we started the cruise ship terminal. How could it, same environmentalist group again, we're wicked, we're going to destroy Grenada's beach, and there's going to be all kinds of stuff. Project was done, cruise ship coming, jobs creating. Grenada's beach is as beautiful as it was before, even enhanced. And I could just go on and on. There has not been one project, unfortunately, not one in my 20-odd years as Prime Minister, any major project that this government has initiated that some environmental body with the same level of persons involved have not attempted to stop using the environment as the basis. You can't forget the Karaku Marina project, where hundreds of boats are now and scores of Karakunians are employed, making very good salaries. How environmentalists came out again, I don't know where they came from. They even brought in people from outside the region to tell us how we destroy the mangrove. Mangroves are the problem, you know. Again, the area, nobody could catch a fish there. Today, all over the place, you see fish, live people are catching fish all over the place around there, and hundreds, scores of people have been employed on serious economic activity. No one in Karaku would challenge that project today. So I'm not surprised, but the people must know about the so-called environmentalists who care about Grenada so much they prefer to see people starve and have no jobs for their political objectives. That's my spin. They may say it's not politics, but I'm convinced it is.
Do you believe, sir, that the populace understands the linkage properly in relation to taking the COVID vaccine and the economy and the provision of jobs and the future of this country?
No, I don't think in general people see the connection. And I think, again, that's why when I began this press conference, I spent some time indicating this thing cannot be done by the politician by itself. Sometimes when people hear politicians speak, they are suspicious that we see politics in it. And sometimes the politician has no choice because they are leaders. They must be involved. In fact, I would have loved to see every single political party making an announcement to that effect. But I can't tell other persons in politics to what to do. But I honestly believe that we need to see much more support from the religious community, and I'm not talking about one church. I must say, I know the Pope has led the Catholic Church, has led. He has spoken out and advised his congregation and the Catholics around the world to take this thing seriously, and he's, in fact, abiding by the rules. But I know that some of his of his constituents may not be necessarily heeding the warning of the leadership. I must say, though, that the President Bishop in Grenada has certainly played his part. I cannot say all other priests have done it, because some have been doing their own thing and on the pulpit telling people not to vaccinate. There are a couple of them I know that have been doing it, and I just hope the bishop will in fact put his foot down in that respect. And all other religious community, I think the Adventist churches have been very responsible, generally speaking, but here again you just find elements among them in a church community in a remote area might be doing their own thing. Some of the Pentecostal churches have been responsible, some are not. So I just call on every church community, no matter what level of church activities exist, should certainly be advising their people, because that's about life and death. It's not about politics here. It's about protecting yourself. And because we watch what's happening in India today. Do we want to have a little bit of that in Grenada? Because we can't take what's happening. But if we get a little ounce of it, we are going to be in a lot of trouble. Remember, India was helping us with vaccine. I think they wish they could get vaccine back to India today. So if they thought they were doing fine, and look where they are now, we might think we're doing fine, but we could easily go back. In fact, there's serious controversy about the whole quarantine process, that we need to relook at some of the decisions that we have made, because we have to balance health issues with the issue of jobs, the issue of the economic activity, because people have to live. We are social animals, and people's lives are being impacted negatively, and we have to understand this. So trying to balance that in a serious political environment also, it's a difficult task for leadership. And I must say, I cannot tell you that this is one of the more comfortable times for me as Prime Minister of this country. This virus has certainly impacted on my own mindset and the way I have to operate myself than any other time in my political history. And so I think it's something that I wanted to mention here this morning.
Prime Minister, finally for me, this time, health care. Where are we in relation to the national health scheme?
Well, we believe national health insurance, NHI, is extremely important. But I did mention that for we to be able to get this in place, it requires a lot of work. The financing of it is going to be extremely important for it to be viable. It would mean having to produce an additional tax on income or other services to be able to fund it. Even we use what the present investment in the healthcare system exists. Addition to that, we must have additional resources. And in a pandemic, the pandemic has certainly done a heavy blow to our program and our date of implementation. And I did say that it would be difficult in a penultimate year of a term in office to talk about additional taxes on the backs of people at this time, especially in a pandemic. So I think the question of the time of implementation and the date to bring that in clearly would have to be adjusted accordingly.
Thank you, Andre. Sherry, the last question of the morning will go to you.
Thank you very much. I just want to shift the focus a bit, Dr. Mitchell, just to get an update on health, our health system. What sort of improvements we've had? We've seen recently visits to the polyclinic in Guava as well. What's the status update on that in terms of its readiness? So the primary health care.
They're preparing to open that facility and to bring the services, diverse services to that part of the country, which will service both St. Mark's and St. John's, that particular area. As you know, the second major building at the hospital services have been opened, We're looking at the dialysis service. As you know, there's tremendous demand for dialysis, and that's again is a clear indication of some of the health problems we face in this country and the need for people to take their health probably more seriously than a lot of people have been taking. The obesity factor in this country is of serious concern, and I always call on people over and over, please take a little walk, please watch what you eat. And I try to lead by example, but I can only continuously tell those around me and those I meet with and to send messages, because that has impact on health. Your blood pressure is something that you monitor. You have these little machines. You don't have to go to a health center these days and be worried when you walk in there when somebody want to tell your blood pressure too high. No, they make it higher. But when they make the announcement, these days you have it in your own little room. You could take your blood pressure. I take my blood pressure every day twice, once in the morning and once in the evening, because my family has a hypertensive history. So that's not highly cancer-related issues over the years, more hypertension. So I don't take chances, and you never know what can happen. But what have to happen will happen, but I wouldn't be a heavy contributor to my own demise. And that's all I could say to people, and I continue to warn everybody and to advise people to take your health very seriously. So we are looking at dialysis unit. It will cost a lot of money, and we don't see the government by itself. It has to be a partnership with private sector going forward. And those who can afford it must pay, because they go abroad now and they pay in many cases. But we have a responsibility to help those who cannot pay and are in need, because my view, every life is as important as the next one.
And just before we wrap to the whole issue of the curfew.
Yes.
Many people are asking whether there will be a review of the curfew based on the time of the curfew, and they're saying food and beverage. Normally, people go hang at nights, and so if in any time soon there will be a revision of the curfew.
I would love to tell you yes. I would love to tell you yes, but I know the circumstances under which we're living, because I know the problem that's happening to particularly the youthful population and the entertainment community and so on. And with the new variants now, and with the possible opening up of more flights into the country soon and more hotels coming on stream, I think it's probably too risky to look at a release at this time. But hopefully with that coming to stream, and as we vaccinate us, I think, to me, it falls heavily, Sharian, on the vaccination issue. I don't think people, Andre made the point, I don't think people understand what they wish to achieve is fundamentally based on our ability to vaccinate. And therefore, we've just had a meeting with the Promoters Association. We agree we're going to Parliament, to Cabinet with a policy program where they can now open up some entertainment activities, but on the condition that the people visiting will all be vaccinated. So they can, if you are vaccinated, and you see the announcement recently, which says, and CDC in the States has now made a point, if you are vaccinated with 2 doses, in most cases of the different vaccines, then you can go out even without a mask outside it. But they told you not to go in very large gatherings, because you can in fact infect people. But if you have a team of persons, like all my staff, my security officers would now soon be vaccinated with 2 doses, then we could be freer than we are right now when we're going out with McMorran. So we don't necessarily have to wear masks again while we are together. And similarly, in gathering with families and so on, you could go back to a lot of entertainment within that particular circle. So I think the issue has to be vaccination. And similarly, if we want to create more jobs and more opportunities, then we have to vaccinate, because it will give us the basic condition in which to protect ourselves.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. I think we've come to the end of the question. Do you want to leave any closing thoughts or comments with members of the media and the listening public?
Yeah, just to thank the members of the media who are present and those online and the first people online listening, and to say that the value of these programs to me cannot be overstated. They need to be able to speak your mind clearly and not be into being to be diplomatic about answers that are required. Be straight with people. I've always been convinced that even when you tell people something that they don't necessarily like to hear, if they feel that you're honest and sincere about your thoughts, they might still disagree, but they will not be mad with you. It's when you try to play games and lie to people, then it becomes a major problem, because after one lie, you're making another lie to cover up the first one, and you become all consumed in a mess of problems. So I want to thank you all this morning for what I consider a very informative and very good session of communication with the media houses of the country.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. To members of the media present, Tonya St. Louis Lauren, Sherry Ann Noel, and Andrew Donner, thank you so much for being here this morning. And to other members of the media, we'll continue with the rotation as we go forward, so look out for your invitation for the next session. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Galistria, you'll get your time sometime soon.